Hey there, Fearless. Welcome back to another episode of Back to Basics with Matt the Clown. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're having a good day. Today, I want to discuss, basically I wanted to make the second episode of Back to Basics, which will take the jumping point from the color wheel from last episode into shadows and light. Shadows and light are the second most important part of art. Color is one thing, but without any difference in shadow and light, as it were, without any contrast, nothing's going to stand out. I've always been a big fan of The Joy of Painting with Bob Ross. The man made art very, very easy to understand, and he was always very calm and accepting. That was part of what made him shine. But just about everything he said was pure gold. And when it comes to shadows and light, there was a quote that I found by him very recently that really illustrates the importance of shadows. What he said is, "Dark is what makes white or any light color show. It doesn't have to be white, it can be any color that's light. But you need that dark contrast to make it jump out and sing for you. Otherwise, it'll just sort of go away and leave you standing there by yourself." And he's entirely right. Without contrast, nothing's going to pop. Nothing's going to really show up in the end, especially when you're talking about things that are going to be 3 and 4 feet away. As our miniatures are for this game. So what I've done to properly illustrate at least what a finished product will look like when you take your time and properly apply shadows and lighting to your minis is I've taken, I'm going to be doing this with my Sanguinary Guard units for the most part for the upcoming episodes of Back to Basics, just because it's convenient. I've taken one of my Sanguinary Guard works in progress, this guy, and a Sanguinary Guard that I painted maybe a year and a half ago when I first picked up the Sanguinary Guard, when I first got into the Blood Angels and decided I wanted to one day make an army. I had decided way back then that I wanted to do the Angels in Carmine Alabaster Sanguinary Guard. So I was working on, getting my whites painted and getting the right shade for alabaster and all that. And I really wasn't paying much attention to, the lighting of it all. So if you look at this guy here, the one that I painted a year and a half ago, when I wasn't paying attention to shadows, you'll see it's all ultimately very flat, especially under this lighting. And especially, as it gets further away, it gets more and more muddy, there's less and less detail. I'm going to put him back next to there. Whereas if you look at the one that I'm doing now, where I'm taking care to apply, careful lighting, careful shadows, even though this one isn't complete on the same level that this one is, in that I've done some of the detail work on this one, and all the detail work on this one is still in the base coat. You can already see just the details here stand out more. The details in the face stand out more. Around the back, the details on the jetpack stand out more. And as you get further away, you can still see a lot of that detail. It's all still there. It starts to bleed together, but that's just the nature of the beast. And in this lighting, despite the fact that it's white under bright lighting and it washes it out immensely, you still get a good look at all those details. So I wanted to show you the comparison between the two so you could see just what kind of results you'll get from a really basic use of shadows and lighting. What I've done is really the most basic approach. And I'm going to go over how I did that in probably the 4th and 5th episodes of Back to Basics. when I discuss, washes and highlights a bit more in depth. But, you can just... It literally, I haven't even necessarily picked a source of light. And that's the next step that I need to discuss with you. Because when you do something... Sorry, that was my phone. When you do something with shadows and light and you want to go real hard with it, you want to go all the way, like let's say you're doing non-metallic metal, which is heavily dependent on a proper understanding of shadows and light, you need to pick a light source. That is to say, you need to pick a direction. If you take a look at the Fearless Games logo, you'll notice, and I actually am the one who did the Fearless Games logo, not to toot my own horn, it came out halfway decent. You'll notice that the, excuse me, that the light is all the reflections and all the highlights versus the lowlights, they're all coming from the upper left. So, if you look at the lower right of any specific point, that's the darkest point. And that's the most crucial part that you need to remember with shadows and light, is that you need to have a coherent source for your light. Now, when you're walking around day to day, sometimes there will be multiple sources of light, and that works when you're, looking at things. But when you're making a model, and specifically painting it to look, to really stand out, to have that really high level of contrast versus the highlights and the lowlights, doing it in such a way that there's no specific point of light. If you're not doing something simple like I've done with this guy, where it's just the white to gray tones, if you're just like if you look at my Captain Dante, or Commander Dante rather, if I had done that with multiple light sources, it wouldn't really look that great, because it just gets confusing to the eye, because you're not looking at the actual natural lighting of it. You're looking at essentially artificial painted lighting. Now, it's really difficult to properly explain the best way to get a handle on the way light falls on things, the way light works. I could sit down and walk you through the parts of the Fearless Games logo, such as, the dice and the shield and the sword. But really, the best way to properly learn how light behaves against surfaces is to observe the world around you. Once again, I'm going to quote Bob Ross. He once said, "You need to understand nature to appreciate it. We spend so much of our lives walking around looking, but never seeing. And if painting teaches you nothing else, it'll teach you to see nature, to appreciate some of the beauty that's around us every day that we take for granted." Now, taking out that last little sort of, I don't want to say preachy bit, but that last sort of spiritual bit, painting carefully and properly and taking your time with it absolutely will teach you to start looking at the world around you in a deeper way. You're going to start looking at, say this paint pot, and how the glossy part of it here, the light is literally coming from right over here. So that's where the gloss hits. And that's where, if you were painting a round surface like this, you'd have the black, this sort of corona of gray, and then the two bright bits of white. And, while it wouldn't necessarily look like the best paint job when viewed from the other side, if that was where you picked your light source, when you viewed it from the proper direction, it would look stunning. Because now you understand how the light behaves. Or maybe you're getting it from this angle, and it's actually almost white for the most part in the highlights. There is no corona of gray. And that's one of the difficulties of black, is it's pretty much white on black for the highlights, and that can be difficult. However, looking at this orange pot, you'll see that, well, it's a little difficult because it's in something glossy. I'm just grabbing things from around my room right now. We're in my bedroom, incidentally. Welcome. Give me a moment to find something that isn't glossy. I own, apparently, a great deal of glossy objects. And I'm back. Sorry about that. I was having trouble finding something in my room that wasn't high gloss and wasn't black. What I've found here is just a resin art piece for Game of Thrones. It's the Baratheon family card, whatever. Fact of the matter is, you get a really good look at. I'm going to continue to use my hobby knife to point things out because it is a nice point. You're going to see, the light is again still coming from the same place it was before, over here. So you'll see all the low lights are in these nooks that are covered up by this high point. So it's this darker green to a black in here. Whereas up here, you have that lighter green here hitting a white because this is a slight gloss. But you'll notice if you look very closely, it's not a full white. It's actually just a very bright green. Because even in high gloss objects, in the natural world, full whites are very, very rare. And so using full whites for your highlights on certain objects is just going to look funny. Even if they're high gloss objects that you're trying to highlight, it's just not going to look right. Like even over here, maybe there's a little bit of full white in here, but it's kind of mostly green. But, up along here is a great example. Oh, dear Lord. Sorry about that. Yeah, even along here, sort of the stag's brow, that's a direct contrasting highlight to here under the brow. Again, my phone, I apologize. I'm bad at this. And you just sort of, if you really look at it, you'll notice all the little intricacies of the highlighting and the low lighting. And just taking away, just don't pay attention to the details up here because that's got little to do with it as far as light goes. But you'll notice how everything about the lighting of the object makes it look three-dimensional. And if you want to make your models look more three-dimensional, you need to pay attention to that kind of thing. Because, bringing back out the examples from before, one of these examples, even from a distance with high white lighting and not the best camera on the planet, clearly looks more three-dimensional, pops out more than the other. And that's just with the most basic use of shadow and light. The most basic approach that keeps in mind the fact that you need that contrast for the light colors to really stand out. And what you want your models to do, even if you don't want to spend days and days on your models, you do want them to stand out at the end of the day because you are putting effort into it. So, I hope you understood at least a little bit of what I said, and I hope it was useful to you, and I hope you are able to take what I've said and put it to good use. There's not much more I can really explain to you without full-on showing you how to do it. And I'm a big fan of self-discovery in this sort of thing. If you want a full tutorial on shadows and light, I'll probably do that in episodes 4 and 5, because in episode 4 I intend on discussing base coating and washing, and in episode 5 I intend on discussing at least highlights to an extent. I might combine the two episodes depending on how I end up planning it out. And in those I'll be showing you on a model how I approach it. But really, if it comes down to it, a lot of it is just trial and error, and as Bob Ross would call it, happy accidents. Remember, as you learn, there's no point of no return. There's no permanent mistake that you can make in this hobby, because you can always paint over a mistake. You can always remove the paint from a model if you really screwed something up. You can always rip the arms off and put different arms back on, or magnetize your models if you're into that sort of thing. There's no end of options out there for correcting what you might consider to be a mistake. So I really recommend that, maybe do a little YouTubing to find other tutorials that might be a little more in-depth than mine, or that might explain it better for you, I highly recommend Girl Painting's channel. But at the end of the day, you're not going to learn by watching, you're not going to learn by listening. You're going to learn by taking those lessons you've watched and learned and putting them to use until you get them to work. So that's going to be it for this episode, with Shadows and Light. Please leave a comment with any questions or any comments. If you want to see a specific painting discussion, a specific episode of Back to Basics, or a more advanced technique explained, please let me know. Direct message me on YouTube or Facebook. Please like us on Facebook. Comment. Oh, Lord. Subscribe here on YouTube. Like our videos to give us some support. Tell your friends. Tell your parents. Tell your neighbors. And just, let us know what you want so that we can give you what you want. Because that's what we want. That's why we're here. So, until next time, take care. Have a great day, great night, whenever you're watching this. And I'll see you again for the next episode of Back to Basics, in which I'll be discussing the first couple of steps for making your models, specifically preliminary assembly and priming. Have a good one, guys.